Welcome back to Data Center Battlegrounds. My name is Nate. I am your host for this afternoon, and today we're going to be reacting to What Every American Should Know About Data Centers by Tommy G. He's got a ton of subscribers, which is awesome. Had someone send me this video in the mail the other day and was like, you need to react to it for your YouTube channel, Data Center Battlegrounds. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's get into it.
We're essentially building the digital prison of the future, a system that knows you better than you know you.
Why do we need to bury family farms and make fortunes for some people and steal fortunes from other people? It doesn't make sense.
Get out of the way, Chief. Nope, get out of the way. You work for us.
Blissfully ignorant of local politics until Microsoft showed up in my backyard.
And I wanted to talk about how we were using an Israeli cybersecurity company to monitor all employee communications.
I think AI will probably, most likely, sort of lead to the end of the world.
That creepy quote is from big tech CEO Sam Altman, whose company OpenAI is one of the biggest names in artificial intelligence. Folks, when you look around the country, it appears the majority of citizens are against data centers moving into their town.
Not now, not ever.
Whether through song,
Not here, not anywhere.
Protests against an AI data center in Union County, New Jersey.
Yet despite this, there are hundreds of them springing up around the nation. Now, here's what big tech executives are telling us on why we should be welcoming data centers into our communities.
we are going to be the dominant player, or China's going to be the dominant player, and there will just be very different rules depending on who wins.
Powering the
So as of today, and my phone is not near me, of course, because I'm not distracted, but as of, let's say, June 21st, 22nd, China announced like a whopping $290 billion, I think, investment the other day, signifying that they are going to expand, at least on their data center efforts. So the China narrative is a popular one, especially among the DC elites.
AI revolution, while also advancing a more reliable, affordable, and clean power grid.
Everybody's ChatGPT, everybody gets it for free, and everybody has access to just this crazy thing such that everybody can be more productive, make way more money.
AI is the biggest technical thing ever in my lifetime. I mean, it is so profound.
However, for many Americans, there is a growing suspicion that they will be the ones to foot the bill for this endeavor while big tech rakes in the reward and profits. And if this data center bet goes wrong, the downsides could be catastrophic. It could mean the destruction of our drinking water supply, the collapse of our already weakened electrical grids, massive price hikes on our monthly utility bills, and giving the government the power of extreme mass surveillance. And the list goes on. So with much on the line, I decided to travel across the country to understand this data center tsunami that is coming our way. So let's begin. But first, a quick word from the sponsor of today's episode.
Folks, for this documentary, we've been on the road, a lot of road trips in Wisconsin and multiple states to all make this happen. And sometimes being on the road makes
Microsoft is building a massive new AI data center right here in Wisconsin, a project that could soon impact all of us.
We're pulling into a Wisconsin farmhouse that has been negatively impacted by this nearby data center. We're going to get their story. And just remember, what's happening to this family could happen to you, could happen to your family members that live out in the country. I think rural people are being disproportionately affected by this crisis.
Okay, so interesting comments right there on the rural versus urban areas. So there is one thing people forget with data centers and AI and modern technology is that we still have this divide in the internet access in the US between rural and urban areas. This is something that a friend of mine told me the other day. I don't have a specific fact for you, but it's just a reminder that we have a lot of rural I'm talking really rural, so not really in close proximity to cities, but there are rural parts of the US that still don't have access to traditional broadband internet as well, which is amazing to see. So, we're building data centers and stuff like that, but we still have this, we call it the internet divide, where it's this connectivity gap between rural areas and urban areas. So, interesting comment.
A data center is a massive industrial warehouse filled with thousands of computer servers that store and process digital information. These facilities serve as the backbone of the internet, making everything from streaming video to now artificial intelligence possible. And to begin this episode, we visit farmers in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, where almost a stone's throw away from their house, Meta began building a billion-dollar data center. And well, that's when the trouble began to start.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us.
Sure.
Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Charlie Barons is a beloved Wisconsin comedian.
Oh my God, I've seen him on YouTube before. I literally I found several of his shorts just hilarious, just because of like the Midwest culture. I remember him posting about this, I think like a while back. I always wondered what happened.
An Emmy-winning journalist who has been traveling the state and speaking at rallies to help locals fight against data centers. Today, we join forces in Beaver Dam.
How long has this been in the family?
It's been in the Frank family since 1974. This farm has been established here for over 150 years.
When did you notice something was amiss in this house?
The main thing was probably right around the end of February. You know, we're turning on the faucets. The water is kind of discolored. It's not real great. Then we had nothing for water. We got someone out to take a look at the well, and then they declared it a dry well. You know, you're looking at either digging that well deeper or digging a whole new well, which could run you $25,000 depending on how deep you need to go.
Folks, let's look at the scale of data center water usage. A single large data center can consume up to 5 million gallons of water a day, which is equivalent to the daily water consumption of a town of 50,000 people. Also, roughly 2/3 of all new data centers being constructed are located in regions facing severe water shortages. In fact, some of our key country's water basins are at risk. The Colorado River, which 40 million people depend on, is being targeted by data centers despite the river already being in the midst of a 2-decade drought.
So there's also the super El Nino meteorological phenomenon that we're currently experiencing, like I think for like the next year or two. So that means like more drought prone conditions compared to like an average summer. So go figure.
Water levels of the Great Salt Lake in Utah are so low that residents are scared they will be facing dust storms. And in Wisconsin, where developers say they will funnel heated data center wastewater back into Lake Michigan, people are concerned that these elevated water temperatures may destroy the local ecosystems. So for many, these risks to our fresh water supplies don't seem to be worth it. Tell me in the comments what you think.
At this point, are you
The wastewater funneling back into like the water table, like the comment that they just made about that, that's interesting because I have heard concerns from folks that like the warmer temperatures will have some sort of like ecological like effect also on like, let's say, fish and like riverine life or marine life if you're dumping it back into the sea. So the warmer temperature, the potential lack of nutrients if it's like been filtered like heavily to avoid corrosion for like the server racks if they're setting up a data center next to a riverine system for intake cooling, and then they like export it out. I haven't really done like a lot of research like into that, so I'm not going to comment on whether or not it's good or bad. These are just concerns that I've heard.
you worried about the quality of your own drinking water?
We've stopped drinking our water.
Who do you call in this situation?
I don't know. You know, we started out with our local city council.
I was going to say, like your public policy official that's supposed to like represent you, that's like my first bet. But if they're the ones that sign the deal.
Who seems to have no interest in anything that's going on in this township.
Have you tried contacting a lawyer?
Yeah, my husband did some calling around, and there wasn't a single one that wanted to talk to us about any of this.
Why do you think that is?
Does anybody want to take on $1 billion, you know?
Now there are micro.
So this is part of the lobbying power that like a lot of these like big tech companies have. I mean, here in DC, God knows, like they're setting up offices and stuff like that, obviously, you know, like to be part of their public affairs team, which has been like very interesting to see on LinkedIn. Like, oh, we just announced our opening of our office in DC. And it's like, this is part of like the lobbying big tech group, which is pretty interesting also to see at the same time. So, I mean, lawyers not wanting to, you know, engage directly with like billion-dollar tech titans, for lack of a better word, like doesn't surprise me, especially if you're not part of like a McKinsey or like a Deloitte, you know. I mean, they're not law firms, but you get what I mean.
Microsoft data center possibly coming to southeast Wisconsin. For the last several months, the Village of Caledonia board's been discussing proposals for a data center there.
Prescott Balch, I live in Caledonia. I was part of the group that pushed back on the Microsoft data center in Caledonia.
Not because we're opposed to development, and we're in favor of maintaining the beauty and rural nature of this village.
So it's interesting, like you can be pro data center, but it's obvious that the way that we're building all this infrastructure is clearly not the right way, or it's not in the right location. So folks are on the spectrum. You can be anti-data center, pro-data center, neutral, and then want like different reasons for not wanting to build or build. I find that interesting.
Thing that you notice when you look at these proposals is every single one of them is in a small town. They're doing that because the land is cheap and they can find proximity to power, which is the key attribute. A small town is no match for a Fortune 50 company when it comes to negotiating terms. And many of these small towns are desperate for some growth. They're desperate for some economic activity, and
that's part of the incentive, right? Is that like if you're a small town and you're not doing well with your local economy compared to like your capital or like bigger city up the road, the idea of a data center setting up shop and bringing in like potentially billions of dollars in investment, arbitrary numbers, don't quote me, is ideal. And that's why these small towns are being approached in the first place. Whether or not they're being taken advantage of, well, that's a whole nother story. And then the proximity to power, like that's the data center for dummies like playbook, right? It's like if you're going to build in like a small town or rural area, you have to make sure that like you are in close proximity to power, water, ample lands, like that type of thing. Proximity to infrastructure, and then also having the labor workforce is ideal. But then again, I wonder if they can afford to like, build everything out in the first place with Stargate Abilene.
they get wined and dined and shown big giant numbers that they can only dream of, and they just want to figure out how to make the best deal as fast as possible, get it approved, and start reaping the rewards.
Across the country, we are hearing reports of people being distressed by the noise that these data centers are making. From Wisconsin,
that's just a high-pitched drone sound.
I can hear it inside my house, and that's what concerns me.
To Mississippi.
For months now, this is the sound communities near the plant hear.
To Arizona.
Neighbors say you'll start to hear a really irritating noise that you can't ever unhear.
This constant noise is driving some people crazy, and it has another sick side effect. It makes it nearly impossible for people to sell their homes, because at the end of the day, who would want to live next to a data center that puts out a relentless 24/7 hum?
It's funny that they say that, because I bet you private equity would be more than willing to buy it no matter what and convert it into something else. I don't know. That was one conspiracy theory that I read online that's starting to, I don't know, maybe take some more traction in my mind, is like, people can't sell their homes, so like who can, and then like who steps in to afford it? Well, private equity, because they can afford and they want to buy up all the, affordable family housing in the US, which is really sad.
Makes me feel like we just don't matter.
Your well that you've lived on for decades, it goes dry. Another company that moved in that doesn't even live here gets the access. It's feeling really Israeli and tactics to me. The water is what keeps a family going, and if we're willing to knock that off for families, we're even signing ourselves up for. After all, if we don't have water, what do we have to live?
My name is Ben Green. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Michigan School of Information and the Ford School of Public Policy. So data centers use a lot of water, primarily for cooling. Developers will talk about things like closed loop systems. I think that does reduce the water use of the cooling. What I've seen is more than half of the water use of a data center is not directly in the cooling, but is in the generation of the electricity in a power plant that is then used to power the data center provided.
So according to, what was it? It was the Making AI Less Thirsty paper. I'll link it in the comments as well, by Dr. Ren from UC Riverside. I believe what he's referring to, where the water is used for power generation at a plant that's like located down the road from the data center, that is scope 2 emissions, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's scope 2. I don't have the paper in front of me, but I think that's scope 2. Scope 1, I think, is like direct water cooling, but yeah. Although I could maybe pull up the paper right now, actually. There's a really cool diagram that y'all can like see about this, making water less thirsty. Communications, archive. So yeah, Dr. Ren is like a really cool professor that goes into like the water consumption aspect of data centers. This is a paper that, here it is. This is, yeah. Okay. So this is a really cool diagram. Hopefully y'all can see this with like the screen or whatever. But so we have scope 1. So on-site scope 1 water usage for data center cooling via cooling towers, and off-site scope 2 water usage. Yeah, so this is what they're referencing right here. So you have your power plant, you have your data center, you have your water source, and then you have your cooling tower, scope 2 water. So yeah, just wanted to show that to educate y'all. And then I'll link the paper also down below too.
the electricity for it.
And as these spurt up around the country and more of them grow, what are the potential implications on our water supply of this?
These data centers are just generally draining the water supply and could lead to issues where, there's not enough water, and it's like, does the data center get water first? If there's a drought and people are being told to limit their water intake, not to water their lawns and so on, are data centers actually receiving that same limitation? Probably not.
So take any environmental law class like ever, and you will figure out very quickly that water rights is such a big thing like in the United States, whether you're like a rancher or like a big corporation. So what I suspect is happening is these data center companies, especially during drought prone conditions, will buy like water rights to like riverine systems or maybe underground aquifers or like parts of like a river or whatever. And that might give them like first dibs, let's say like in an area where, the local city county is like telling you like, oh, everyone has to watch their water use, but then the data center gets priority because I guess maybe they bought up all the water rights. Could be an interesting avenue of research.
Wisconsin is the largest freshwater resources of any state in the country. And there's a reason data centers are popping up close to these resources is because they need massive amounts of water. And they can use like 3 to 5 million gallons of water a day. And companies will tout a closed loop cooling system. We really don't know what this closed loop cooling system is actually going to mean for water use for these sites, or what happens to the water after it's gone through the closed loop.
So to the best of my knowledge, like closed loop water systems use a fraction of like what, let's say, normal cooling systems for data centers would use. You still require like an injection of water like up front, but from what I've read on industry like websites, closed loop systems are like the answer to this water consumption narrative that like a lot of folks will like ask questions about. And then like what happens to the water afterwards? Well, I mean, I thought for a closed loop water system, the water is used internally over and over and over again. So I'm not really sure like when you would need to like, let's say, re-inject water like after, let's say, 2 years of like using the same water. I'm not exactly sure. But then that also brings up the wastewater treatment aspect that we were talking about before. Just thought you'd find that interesting. That's where I live.
What is leading you to become a whistleblower?
Some practices that I don't agree with.
I was approached by a whistleblower who has worked with the biggest data center companies in the world, including Meta and Amazon Web Services. Because he is still actively employed by one of these tech giants, he needed to remain completely anonymous, but what he said is chilling.
We're building the security apparatus that spies on every American. We're essentially building the digital prison of the future. A system that knows you better than you know you.
Do you think we have something to worry about as far as water consumption from the data center?
Yes, unfavorable billing practices. My company pays close to $250,000 per year in water usage. Every single day, we put almost 100,000 gallons of water into the atmosphere. And I wanted to talk about how we were using...
Wait, into the atmosphere. So he's talking about evaporative cooling, like with air?
...an Israeli cybersecurity company to monitor all employee communications and all of the status of our equipment.
Do you know what company that was?
The company's name is Check Point.
This is Check Point co-founder Shlomo Kramer. He's an Israeli cybersecurity entrepreneur who served in the IDF's notorious Unit 8200, which is the equivalent of America's NSA and is Israel's most elite cyber warfare group. Here's what he...
So this is going to be diving into so in the conspiracy theory world, right? We have like kind of two schools of thought. So there's the CCP front, where like a lot of like data center opposition is funded by the CCP, yada yada yada, Chinese Communist Party. I believe OpenAI came out with like a policy brief about like CCP targeted operations with like data center opposition groups, and they were saying that like while, if I'm remembering correctly, the majority of protests were not like CCP funded, but there were operations to try to like stir up the hornet's nest, quite literally, with this. And then there's the Israeli theory where, we work with the Israelis for example, with, the Iran conflict that's still like ongoing. Peace deal like fell through, unfortunately. And then there's like the stuff with Lebanon. That's a whole different topic. I'm not going to get into that. But then folks are saying that like, okay, since the U.S. military and the Israeli militaries work so close together, including cyber, then there's a possibility that data centers might actually be surveillance centers.
He said on national television about free speech in the United States.
It's time to limit the First Amendment in order to protect it.
This Tel Aviv-based company...
Holy crap, did he just say that on live television? Whoa, the irony. An Israeli, like a foreign national telling us that we need to, I mean, I'm a believer in the First Amendment, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this like freaking YouTube video. Did he really say that on like live TV? Damn. I can't believe that. Yeah, that just sent me through a loop. I mean, there's also the anti-tech extremism stuff that's like been, being passed around, if y'all don't know what that is, with like law enforcement agencies like potentially labeling folks that critique data centers and their, AI operations or whatever as like, anti-tech extremists. So I wonder if those two are linked. Holy crap.
Is used by every single one of the top 50 companies in the Fortune 500, and with Kramer's attitude on free speech, his direct ties back to Unit 8200, and Israel's stranglehold elsewhere in this country, I can't help but feel concerned when a company connected to a foreign spy agency is acting as the cybersecurity gatekeeper for almost every major corporation in America.
I'm John Mazzarella. I own and operate Coastal Crypto. It's a data center mining operation facility.
To get the other side of the coin, we sit down with John Mazzarella. He's the owner of Coastal Crypto, a company which repurposes old industrial sites into crypto mining data centers. Here's what he had to say.
We tried to take a different approach to it. We saw that there was a lot of abandoned power, failing grid systems, buildings that were just vacant for years. Big issue right now with Google in my area is how much water they're going to consume. And they're saying it's proprietary information. I'm sure some of it's proprietary. I don't put that by them, but let's open up the doors a little bit. Why are we using so much water? Well, what kind of situations are we using with the water? Because there's water that gets recycled, there's water that gets captured, there's water that gets evaporated. What kind of impact is their water usage actually going to have to that local economy? That information needs to be divulged.
The physical building will last nearly forever. It's, concrete and steel, and they last a long time. They are very unique.
So the physical, yes, like, again, I'm not a construction person, but like the physical part with concrete and steel, yes. But then there's also like the narrative that like data centers are also like a depreciating asset because of just like the server racks. Like there's the whole e-waste concept that I think doesn't really get talked about enough, where like you overclock your data center, right? For an AI training workload, they require more energy, emit more heat, yada, yada, yada. I can't help but wonder, like, wouldn't you burn them out? And then like what happens to the chips? Like you obviously have to replace them to make sure that the data center doesn't have any interruptions and like it's, uptime or whatever. But yeah, like the physical part of the data center will be fine, but like I think the server racks are the depreciating asset in this like comparison.
Buildings, they're not like warehouses, they're not like office buildings, they don't have windows, they don't have tall ceilings. The historical average over the last 40 years is that a data center is good for 15 to 25 years, and then the technology change catches up with it, and it's not economically viable to retrofit it with the latest. The future reuse possibilities are limited. I don't think any of these municipalities looking into this are thinking about that risk.
The local political people are enjoying the influx of money, and there's a lot of local people who are enjoying the influx of money. Nobody wants to even hear the local people who are paying the price.
Let's wrap our...
Wait, what? The political elites are benefiting from like an influx of money from a big corporation while the local citizens are potentially suffering and their concerns are not being addressed? What? That's heresy.
Heads around why, despite widespread citizen protest, local government officials continue to push through data centers. One big reason is the absolutely real boom of construction jobs, and the other is the pledge of massive tax revenue. Now, in places like Loudoun County, Virginia, estimates project that over $1 billion in taxes is...
So Loudoun County, Virginia is one of the richest counties in the US. That I did not know, which is insane. And that's because of just like the data centers and the tax systems that's like set out there. That's crazy.
coming to the county budget by taxing the servers inside the data centers. But for most other towns, this gets a little murky. You see, developers use a loophole called a TIF, which is a tax incentive that essentially takes the new promised property taxes and recycles them right back to pay for the data center's own infrastructure. So on paper, the town looks like it's getting rich, but in reality, it's not the citizens who benefit, it's just another tax break for big tech.
I just want that money so badly. I want that revenue. I want to be able to get the new construction on my books so that I have a higher valuation so that I can raise taxes for the village and not raise taxes on each individual, because I've got this big taxpayer providing a big slug of new money. But like all things too good to be true, because of those risks, they're outsized risks.
Most of the stories I see about data centers are about citizens losing the fight. But then I got wind of news out of Tucson, Arizona, where the citizens organized, fought back.
Yeah, damn, it beat me to the punch. I was gonna say, this one was about, what was it, there was a specific coalition in Arizona that made the news because it was like one of the first it was like one of the first case studies where like a community had like successfully defended against like a data center trying to set up shop, and they stopped it. The city council, I think, actually voted against it, which was like the fascinating part.
And won. This is local leader Jennifer, and she tells us how.
My name is Jennifer Allen. I am the District 3 Supervisor and Vice Chair of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. We had been told on the Board of Supervisors that there was a project kind of being cooked up called Project Blue. We were not given much information at all, not until right up before the vote that we took to approve it. We were told that we couldn't get much more information because of a non-disclosure agreement, but we were also told that we couldn't talk about it because of a non-disclosure agreement.
Another concerning aspect of data centers is the standard practice of imposing NDAs that prevent locals from knowing key details that impact their own city. For example, in the town of The Dalles in Oregon, Google built massive data centers there, and the local government, bound by an NDA, refused to tell the public how much water Google was using. After a prolonged legal battle and a lawsuit led by the town's local newspaper, The Oregonian, the city was forced to release these records, and it turns out that these data centers were using over a quarter of the city's water supply. And folks, it's stories like this that increase people's paranoia around data centers when on one hand, big tech tells us that there's nothing to worry about, but on the other hand, they silence local officials and keep the usage around town resources secret from the very people that live there.
We sat in near silence and in the dark until Beal, the developer of Project Blue, gave a more comprehensive-ish presentation to the board. When it was first proposed, it was going to be a water-cooled system, meaning they were just going to keep pumping water, tens of thousands of gallons of water every day. We're a desert. We live in a beautiful desert, a lush desert, but it is a desert no less, with increasingly extreme heat, with longer periods of drought. We simply cannot sustain water-hungry industries like data centers.
Our water situation here is vastly different than it used to be. Our property values are probably actively tanking as we stand here and talk. But you look around here, there's no standing water anywhere. You drive to Fond du Lac and look in the fields on your way back towards Green Bay. There's water everywhere.
Does it feel like a hostile takeover of your own land and water?
It feels like a hostile takeover of my township. Why do we need to bury family farms and make fortunes for some people and steal fortunes from other people so cats can wear hats? It doesn't make sense.
Because we need data centers to generate cat memes, y'all. Come on. That's like the end all be all. But in all seriousness, like, people do also have a problem with like converting farmland into data centers. Like, this is also like another big thing that I've seen recently is like another, reason to join the community opposition ranks is because like people are like, we need more food in this country. Like, why are we converting farmland into data centers as well? So farmers getting approached to build data centers, I'm not surprised.
So while farmers in Beaver Dam are worried about their wells running dry due to Meta's data center, 90 miles away in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin, Microsoft has moved in. And Prescott explains how locals are worried about a massive tax increase coming their way.
Mount Pleasant puts $1 billion of new valuation on their books, which equals 17% increase in their total valuation. That meant they could raise their taxes 17%. Well, they chose to only raise it 8% and then hid that increase behind some other line item reductions to sort of hide it from the community members. The developer of the data center does not start contributing to that general fund until that tax increment district is closed out. Microsoft, in the case of Mount Pleasant, is not paying a dime towards that 8% increase. That is coming on the backs of every person in Mount Pleasant.
If we don't start standing up for what is right, this is going to continue forever until it's too late.
They're operating as a business. They have a lot of negotiating power when they're choosing these sites, and they get tax exemptions when they do so. They're not playing by the rules that you and I have to play by.
That's what the water looks like. And if the mayor of Beaver Dam wants to come drink it, she can. At this point, it's completely contaminated. For sure.
My God, I mean, typically when you have stuff like that happens, like the water table is so low that like usually you've got dirt, sand, and sediment or whatever, just like flooding like the rest of like whatever's like super low in like the water table, or they just like that's wow.
So all this sand
just came out of that faucet, yeah.
And that never happened before.
No. Anybody want a drink?
Not fast.
What you see here is sand and sediment in Scott's water. And if you've seen AOC's viral clip talking about Georgia drinking water, you've seen this before.
This is what the drinking water now looks like next to that data center. And I think both of us can agree that neither one of these things are drinkable.
For people near data centers, this can happen, and it's for two main reasons. First is the heavy construction shaking up the local water table, and second is because of the vacuum-like pressure that comes when a data center is sucking millions of gallons of the town's water supply. Now, sand is obviously bad, but for those even more unlucky, they're worried about losing their water supply altogether.
So the water pressure just drops so significantly, and I guess, and then like also, so the vacuum effect is interesting. That I did not know. And then the heavy construction just mixing the water table or like disturbing it is enough to like add maybe sediment. Like if you have a water table like so, there's heavy construction on the surface and it's so freaking like they're using like, you know, jackhammers or whatever, it creates like a mini earthquake that puts the sediment like into the water table just because it displaces stuff through vibration alone. I mean, yeah, I guess if you, yeah.
How long have you been out of a job?
It's probably been about a good year.
And how long did you work on the data center?
About 4, going on 5 years.
5.
This is so cool that like he's interviewing folks that like a whistleblower for data centers in DC, and then also like a former maybe engineer. This is really good journalism, y'all. Wow.
Wow. So this project has been in development for a long time.
Yeah, it was all over the newspapers before they were even here. You know, just because everybody was so excited because it was bringing jobs and work and just things like that.
It does bring jobs initially, but as soon as it's done and built, then it's kind of
Well, that again, short-term versus long-term time horizon. So the common story is that data centers create a ton of jobs in the short term for construction, and then in the long term, what do those jobs like create? Like I saw a post about a week ago kind of focusing on like the longer term aspect, and like the research was claiming like, oh, like they, you know, because of just like the data center and like the infrastructure that was built and just like the roads that were set up, the hospitals that were set up for the laborers, the supply chain benefits, all that stuff, the indirect long-term jobs that were created were like pretty big as well. So I have to dig into that, just truth be told, but that just wanted to share what I've learned.
And so it's built, functioning, and there's no more.
It basically runs itself, and you don't need that many people, you know, after you.
Bingo, there we go. Yeah. 250,000 square foot data center may have approximately 50 full time. And so this might actually like, oh, this is in Virginia. Yeah. So this is with the DCRSUT, the data center sales use tax exemption. I had to kind of like look into it a little bit for my capstone. If I am remembering this correctly, with the DCRSUT, the data center that's setting up shop or whatever just has to create 50 jobs until 2035 with a one-time requirement that's not annual, and that's typically associated with the maintenance and operation of the data center itself. only 50. Can you it's still, it just, even saying it after is just like insanely low. I can't believe that, dude. That's so crazy. Yeah. And then like I'm looking at startups that can like also automate data center construction as well. Which is like, who knows, you might not even need 50, you know? I mean, I know that's part of the tax exemption law, but still.
You build everything.
How well did they pay people to work on this project?
At first, it was barely like $14, $15. As of now, they pay people pretty good because they don't have as many people.
Is water plentiful in these parts?
You can see they've almost dried out this section of the lake right here.
Folks, behind me right now is the body of water that cools these data centers. And if you look over here, this is a lake that 5 years ago was full and now it is dried up. And I think it's fair to ask ourselves and be afraid, are these water sources going to be dried up in 5 years, 10 years? And what are the implications on our everyday life when that happens? Will we be regulated to showering on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays while these data companies get full usage of our water? Will this
is a mandatory water enforcement mechanism. You'll only shower once a day because the data center down the road has to consume all the water. I mean, it sounds like such a 1984 Orwellian dystopian future, doesn't it? So I guess the stakes are pretty high if we get it wrong.
Clean water turn into toxic water? Will it creep through into our aquifers and water tables? And at what cost to the average person will these operations have? And the problem is that when you try and dig into these matters, oftentimes these are classified things protected.
The NDA stuff is so bad. I mean, like, my God. I mean, on one hand, I understand that these are like businesses and companies and they have a right to proprietary data and it's confidential. It's a cutthroat business. I get it. But also at the same time, I mean, an NDA is like so secretive. And if you're forcing city council folks to like sign an NDA in exchange for setting up shop, I mean, of course you're going to have community opposition. I mean, do people not think this through? Do their PR teams like, unless the amount of money that they make is just so incomprehensibly ludicrous to the point where they can afford to fight it. But I mean, are the big tech PR teams or whatever not thinking that like, okay, if we do this NDA with this like town community, it's going to cost us more in the long run because the community is going to fight back against us. So maybe we don't do an NDA and we actually try to be a positive use case in this industry and show that like data centers are actually good. Yes, they have some problems, but we can work on them together. You know, like where is the brain process here?
By NDAs because it's company secret, company information. And we as the people, I think, have a right to know what direction this is headed, especially if it's our water supply, and one of the most basic things that we need to live.
Folks, it may sound like I'm being overly dramatic, but you have to know what is happening.
You're not. He's not being overly dramatic at all. This is the lives of everyday people that are at stake here. So it's not. These concerns, and I hate it when like, I really hate it when like Kevin, like, well, I mean, too late now. I was going to say, like, if Kevin O'Leary is watching this video, whatever. But I really hate it, like, when I read, like, pieces in the news or interviews where, like, what's the best way to put this? Like, folks are saying that, like, oh, the environmental impacts of, like, data centers are, like, overblown. And it's like critics are overhyping the costs and stuff. And they make comparisons to other sectors. It's like, okay, I get it. Like, you know, they are working on efficiency metrics for energy and water and carbon. And yes, like, I guess if you do compare data center water usage to agriculture and to golf courses, yeah, I mean, I get it. But like at the end of the day, we have a chance to like correct wrongs that are clearly happening where the externalities are being absorbed by communities. And so like, if we can't do something about this now, it's just going to get worse because like, you know, it's out of sight, out of mind. I live in DC, right? But I don't live next to a freaking data center, you know?
Behind closed doors. Across the country, data centers are making extremely lopsided, secretive deals with local governments that border on predatory. In many of these arrangements, data centers lock in massive water and power contracts that are shielded from the public eye. And because they get special wholesale rates, mega corporations often pay less for water and power than you do in your own town. Some states like Wisconsin.
Oh, the special rates. Yeah, I've seen that as well. I've seen the special rates where I've seen the special rates lock in where like they pay, less, for example, compared to like residential or whatever. But recently, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, we covered this in one of our videos that you should totally watch, came out with some guidance for grid operators, I think, to create like a new rate class for data centers for like energy. So who knows? They might be paying maybe like new rates and stuff like that. I don't know if it's going to be more expensive or less. I have to do some more research into that.
Wisconsin are fighting back and requiring data centers to cover their costs, but in most cases, citizens pay the price, like in Virginia, where electricity prices have increased by over 267% in the last 5 years.
Does the town feel like this is a benefit to the community?
As far as having a job, maybe.
How do you feel about all this?
I kind of got a sore spot in my throat for it because of what I went through, but then when I was, making money with them, it was a good thing.
A lot of Americans.
So this is the classic, choosing the lesser of two evils dilemma. So I'm in the climate world, right? And I see job postings for, this is a great example. Anthropic had a job posting for a data center energy lead in Australia, right? And we all know that like they're building out natural gas as fast as possible to power all of this, like regardless of where you are in the world. So my question to you is like, if you're making great money working at Anthropic, you're making 7 figures, you're the data center energy lead, but you're powering all of this by like natural gas. And then also at the same time, in some ways, you're kind of profiting off of like the health impacts of like communities by making that amount of money. So I don't know. I mean, like, you're making great money and it's a job, but also at the same time, it's clear that there are some significant like risks that are associated with this. So, take your pick.
Americans, we fear that with this AI growth and this data center growth, that a lot of jobs will be replaced with AI, leaving a lot of people jobless while we have these really rich people at the top getting even more rich.
I could believe it because at this point, if you're not building more like they are, it basically runs itself. And the only thing you have to do is maintenance.
One of the biggest red flags is that we the people are going to be screwed by these deals.
Yes, your water bill will go up about 100% over a period of time. Not
2 years, 5 years?
Probably about 5 years. But the data center will pay the same amount every year for their water usage and power usage because they're viewed as essential.
These are the richest people.
So the national security angle, this is what I was telling you all about before too. So for example, in the XAI case that we were talking about last week, depending on when this is filmed, right? So DOJ, Department of Justice, weighed in on that case and said that you can't shut off like the natural gas turbines because they're essential for national security and for, strategic military operations because they're using Grok apparently, God forbid. So we're gonna if the common citizen is paying a 5 times higher energy and water bill, but the data center pays the same, can the Department of Justice legally say they are legally allowed to pay less because they are a national security essential asset while the common citizen is not, and they have to foot the bill? I wonder if we'll reach that stage.
People in the world. I mean, we're talking about Larry Ellison in Port Washington, who's the 2nd richest man on earth.
How did these folks end up getting reserved spots if they're not paid yet?
That's the scene there. Hundreds of trucks moving tons of dirt. It's the sound Port Washington residents have been listening to 24/7. Work being done day and night.
We own this building. We're the taxpayers. Hey, you work for us.
All of that have reservations.
What you are seeing is concerned citizens trying to attend their city council meeting about data centers, but being told there's not enough room. So instead, they are pushed off into a separate area with no face-to-face contact with the city decision makers.
Is it full in there?
It's full. Yes.
And in one of the last Port Washington meetings, local resident Christine was forcibly removed by police.
Oh my God, I posted about that one clip. I remember this. This went super viral just because, unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. I mean, is it full? Is it not full? I have no idea. But there's also this there is a very strong anti-police movement in the U.S. right now. This will make it 100 times worse if they're interpreted as defending the, political / tech elite, and then the common citizen can't, I don't know, attend city council meetings because quote unquote it's too full. but who knows? Like, it could be a legitimate fire hazard, and they're like, no, you can't like attend. But set up a damn Zoom live stream, and then like have people like call in. Like there are ways around this. For goodness sake, we went through remote work with the pandemic. There's ways around this.
Face-to-face contact with the city decision makers.
Is it full in there?
It's full of people, yes.
And in one of the last Port Washington meetings, local resident Christine was forcibly removed by police.
Get off of me! Get off of me!
A Port Washington City Council meeting turned into a shouting match, ending with 3 people arrested on Tuesday. All of it because of a recently approved data center.
Get out of the way, Chief. Nope, get out of the way.
We cannot speak for all of you, but we will try and speak for you. Thank you.
This is outrageous. Yeah, thank you.
At this point, the question is not whether opposition exists. It clearly does. The question is whether this council is willing to acknowledge risk, accept responsibility, and change course when warranted.
I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I genuinely believe the data centers and AI in and of itself could potentially be cataclysmic economically. Like, the people of Port Washington are immensely frustrated, as millions of Americans are across the country, because we don't want these technocrats swooping into our communities to steal all of our resources so that they can eventually take our jobs. We don't have the ability to live the American dream. It's essentially been stolen from us. All of these.
This is unfortunately, it's the merging of so many different issues like put together. It's the cost of living crisis. It's AI potentially taking away jobs. It's data center companies setting up shop in communities and absorbing all of the resources or whatever, while the community pays like the local externalities from such a deal. Power bill, water bill, health impacts, like take your pick. Like this is the mark my words, like this is the merging of like a bunch of different things all together, including political ideologies as well.
Issues kind of compound on one another, and it's leading to a generation of apathetic, disillusioned, and frankly disinterested individuals who don't want to be members of a democratic society anymore.
It's like $15 billion into this Port Washington data center to create, 100 jobs?
By my calculations, if Port Washington takes the full amount of the new construction, their taxes will increase 50%. The city taxes will increase 50% over the course of the next probably seven or 8 years. I think you should tell people that, tell people that's your plan, and then see how excited they are about it.
Amanda Mueller lives a half-mile from the site.
Right now it's very bright. We call it the land of the midnight sun. You can't see the...
So light pollution. This is another aspect that I have not seen before. I've heard about noise pollution. We've talked about water, energy, carbon. Well, carbon emissions, not so much, but that's more on the traditional environmental side. But light pollution, that's something that is an ongoing thing too.
Stars anymore.
City officials say working overnight means the build-out will be done and the city will see tax benefits sooner. But this group isn't holding their breath.
Hundreds of people just started showing up and expressing lots of concerns about the use of water and energy and the costs. And that momentum just kept growing and growing, and they were successful in getting the city of Tucson to back out and to agree not to annex the property, which...
Look at that. It's in the middle of a desert. Why are you building there? I guess the solar and the open land, I get it. But my God, of course there's going to be a massive problem with the water consumption aspect. My God. There was a Guardian article that said that 2/3 of upcoming data centers are going to be built in drought-prone areas across the U.S. I mean, go figure.
And that Beale was stuck with our 290 acres, and all this plan that they had cooked up just fell flat. Knowing what we know now, I wish we'd had all of those things in place before, so that we would have had greater opportunity to stop the project, a lot more information, a lot more transparency, and just tools for community to be involved and draw the line.
Initially, when we interviewed Jennifer out in Tucson, it was a victory story. The people had shut down and the city council had shut down a data center coming to town. But I just saw an update that the Arizona Corporation Commission is trying to push it through despite the will of the people.
I don't believe
and so
this.
It's not looking like a victory for the people, it's looking like a victory for big tech. We'll see how the story continues. What are the revenue streams from a data center?
They are humongous. So, for example,
if I had to guess, I'm going to be completely wrong. Revenue streams for a data center. Maintenance, construction jobs, cloud computing services, AI workloads, depending on what type it is. What else would you software potentially. Okay, so yeah, construction, cloud computing services, running AI workloads. What else? I don't know. Those are the ones off the top of my head.
I plug in one server to another. That is $300 per month from that just one fiber connection. Now there are millions of fiber connections inside of every single data center. The numbers are so large that you can't even comprehend how much money it is.
Right now, all over the country, big tech is offering individual farmers tens of millions of dollars for their land and spending billions on construction. And you might be wondering, how will they be making all this money back? Because yes, they make subscription money by charging people $20 a month for chat.
Yeah, but the burn rates on these companies are absurd, especially for OpenAI. And then like there's less and less with what you can do with those subscriptions because the cost of compute is like so damn high, especially with like tokens. Whenever if you run an AI agent constantly, your token usage is going to be through the roof. It's gotten so bad that companies are actually cutting back on token usage because it's so damn expensive.
ChatGPT, or they sell massive corporations AI software packages, and this does bring in a good chunk of change, but in reality, this money does not make a dent in what they are currently spending. Essentially, these tech companies are making a giant gamble to become the AI superpower of the future, which to them is a trillions of dollars winner-takes-all race. And if this bet does not pay off, the crash of this AI bubble will be felt globally. In fact, some experts warn that a collapse would wipe out as much of $33 trillion in market value, and this would plunge the stock market by as much as 40 to 60%. Yikes.
What do you see as the biggest misconceptions that a lot of people who are up in arms have about these data centers?
Again, it's educating on these smaller details. Internet. I'm not tapping into the town's, fiber line. I'm bringing in my own. I'm not pulling residual power from the town. I'm, increasing the consumption of power for the town, or I'm increasing the grid structure. So I'm not stealing anything. I'm not taking away from somebody that could use it. I'm trying to bring more infrastructure and stability to a grid system or a network system or a community that needs jobs.
What comes to your mind when you see all this?
I mean, a big metaphor, a huge metaphor, a giant whole
big tech colonialism.
Looking carcass of a metaphor of industry that used to be built by American workers, by men using their hands with skills, trades. And obviously this was built by workers, but now, we're talking to one of them that kind of got discarded. There's a bunch of reporting on how they promised 300 jobs and actually wound up hiring 14.
These billion-dollar facilities only employ 100 people, some of them...
That's insane, dude. Like, billion-dollar facilities only creating like 100 jobs. My God.
Security staff, some of them janitorial staff, but they will claim that they bring 1,000 jobs or more to the area per building.
Right.
But that's not the case. They use contractors that travel from outside the locality.
Out-of-state jobs, which is what we were talking about before. Non-union jobs, not permanent ones.
And all of these jobs are not permanent jobs.
Their main workforce is the minor maintenance, what I was saying. Once the computers go down, they bring them in racks, and they just refurbish them.
And then, how long until it's robots maintaining them? How long
Bingo.
Until it's like a Tesla
told
bot
y'all.
just walking around, just changing racks, checking switches?
And you probably could.
You have those systems already in Amazon warehouses. Like, seriously, I'm not joking. Search it up. Amazon warehouses are starting to use more robotics, with especially the humanoid ones, and that's like a massive source of concern because like a ton of folks like rely on like Amazon warehouse jobs to, I don't know, pay rent, and if you're out of high school and you need a job to pay the bills and stuff like that, like those are gone in like 5 years because of Jeff Bezos's new AI startup Prometheus targeting manufacturing. But he's also expressed several statements where it's like, oh, like those jobs are pretty much gone in like 5 years, because like why would I need to hire human workers that need, breaks and health insurance and, want to be paid like a living wage when I can just like literally use a robot. Fuck yeah, or I can't. Damn, I can't curse. I was gonna say the F word on here, but you get the idea.
Automate that like a car, like an assembly line.
If this giant carcass of a building isn't the perfect metaphor for what's happening all around America with these data centers, I don't know what is.
Kaiser, you've been looking into this extensively for the last 3 or 4 years. Tell me about that.
So it used to be warehouses kind of
It started with development in Bensenville, Illinois.
Kaiser runs a YouTube channel called Stringer Media, and he's been spending the last few years going around the country covering communities that have been taken over by data centers. Today, we see what Microsoft has done in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin.
Essentially, a warehouse developer bought all of these people's homes. Perfectly nice houses. One day they're there, next they're gone.
You go from a functioning community to an industrial wasteland.
Yeah, everybody's just gone. So I could take you to a street that's been bought out.
To me, what I think of when I look at a place like this is, look, a nice little yard. Kids could play in the prairie. There was a bird feeder. There was a family here that had a great time, but we're in a time where a lot of people are economically pinched, and if you come to someone's doorstep and offer them way over market, a lot of people are in a position.
A lot of people will say, yes, I'm going to take that and get the heck out of here.
Where they kind of have to take it, or they feel like that's their ticket to a future in America. And like, I think if we were in more prosperous times, or the middle class was stronger, the data centers wouldn't have as much luck as they are emptying out these neighborhoods as they are right now.
The middle class is gone. I mean, it's been gone for a while now, I think, and it's just going to keep on getting like worse. I mean, disagree with me if you want, but like, this is my take on it, is like, the middle class has like been, I mean, the middle class is pretty much like gone, I think. Like, what you're going to have is like two classes in society. You're going to have the extremely rich, we just literally had the world's first trillionaire created like last year. These companies that IPO, OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever, they're all going to be like, trillions worth of valuation on the stock market. So that means that the folks that work there, the CEOs, like all that stuff, they're going to be like, trillionaires. But then like, you're going to have the rest of society, quite literally a tale of two economies. The middle class gets squeezed the most, and then they vanish. And then stuff like this happens where you have entire neighborhoods being bought out by private equity or the companies. And then it's an industrial hellscape, quite literally. So if we had a stronger middle class, we would have more collective bargaining power. But unfortunately, we appear to be in this like weird tech oligarchy now. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. Most of these houses were older people. It's a lot of money. They probably had these houses before even the highway was here. These warehouses and data centers might be abandoned along the line. Maybe they're obsolete.
Actually, a pretty likely option is that we're going to be left with these giant shelves of buildings that in most of these agreements, the companies are not responsible for taking care of, and it's going to be the people that have to deal with them. And they're not easy spaces to convert into human spaces again.
It's one of those gold rushes, Everyone's trying to hop on the money, just do as much as they can, and eventually maybe it'll die down or something like that. And then what are you left with? Just destroyed nature and empty buildings.
Some people might say, if you're against data centers, you're against progress.
That's what I'm telling
you.
That's
anti-American.
I mean, there's a strong current of that, but I disagree. I think it's very American to want to say,
Absolutely,
we don't
American.
want to just have monopolistic overlord.
We're standing up for our damn rights, dude. Like the Constitution affords us like the First Amendment, the second, whatever, you know what I mean? It's like people should not have to live with this, and it is within their right to fight back. That's my take. If there are clear problems that we need to address, then it's a sign that the industry itself is not building it the right way. And I've said that before, I think, on this YouTube channel, where like it is possible to build out data centers in such a way that it is regenerative and sustainable as much as possible. Of course, there's still problems to deal with, but the data center industry has to transform from an extractive industry to a regenerative one where it's contributing back more than what it takes. And unfortunately, it's consuming far more at the moment.
We care about our communities. We want to have local community voice is very important, very American. AI is being dominated and developed by a handful of companies that do not care about the public interest. And so the types of AI that they're going to develop are not going to be utopian things. They're going to, develop tools that are not very helpful, that put workers out of jobs, kind of poisoning kids' brains, stopping people from learning. Some people might call that innovation, but to me, that's just bad.
Look, the average American should be locked into to what AI and what data centers are going to do in their lives. I think 30 million jobs in the coming years.
Yeah, it's hard to do that when you have the majority of Americans in this scarcity mindset where they are literally trying to pay their bills on a monthly, what do they call it? Paycheck to paycheck basis. And if they can't, then they're pretty much screwed. You know, it's hard to do that when like, you know, your life is like paycheck to paycheck. And like if a data center comes in, that's not your biggest concern, especially if it has the promise, the siren call of like, we'll create a bunch of jobs and contribute stuff. So, all right, that's all I got for you today. Like, share, and subscribe the video. I will leave Tommy G's video link in the About section as always. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Data Center Battlegrounds. We'll see you on the next one. Ciao.